Alright guys, welcome to the week 36 lecture, Globalism in the Information Age. So, couple things. Number one, this is the last lecture. This is it. This is, even in a normal year, this would be the final new information lecture I do, because next week you guys would begin your final project, which is a big, long, extended research thing. This week, of course, this year, of course, it'll be a little bit different, but we'll get to that next week. So, what the information age refers to, essentially, is the modern era, the 21st century. It refers to the fact that basically post-2000, in this new century, these last 2 decades, the world has become essentially run by computers, meaning information, data, is now the new currency. Right? Data and information are money. And you'll see that in one of the videos I gave you that talks about the fact that when you guys are on the internet, especially when you use social media programs, and really any kind of website, you are not the user, you are not the customer, you're the product. Your data, pretty much everywhere you go, is always being sold. So unless you're somebody who subscribes to high-quality VPN software, and even then, if you do online banking, if you do online shopping, even then, your data is still being put out. And since all of you guys are addicted to social media, you are literally giving away information about yourselves. So that's really what the information age is about, is the fact that data is now a new form of currency. Globalism, which is a term you guys would have seen in your vocab, is a real simple concept. As you'll see here in this little image I posted up, it refers to the fact that the world is interconnected, right? It's a global system. This isn't new. Globalization, which is the process of making things global, making economies and politics global, is not new. It's been around for thousands of years. We had the Bronze Age globalization, we had the Roman globalization, we had the Golden Age of Islam globalization. It's not a new concept. But in the 21st century, it's very different because it really starts essentially in 91-92 with the end of the Cold War. Capitalism defeats communism. Now, the dominance of capitalism means that not only is there a new global order, but it is one truly driven by economic needs, meaning obsessions with things like free trade between groups of countries. Now, this increases the overall wealth of the world, but it's also very important that you're aware that this mostly happens for industrial nations, which is why we have this wonderful picture where the top 10% of the world owns, as you can see here with the pie cut in half, 50% of all the money. And that's not an exaggeration, guys. 10%. So only 1 in 10 people control half of all the wealth, resources, data, money, everything in the world. Okay, so this is part of the result of a capitalist global system. So we end up with 2 different kinds of countries, developed and emerging. You may have also heard them called first and third world countries. That concept is not always supported by people because there are some vague, tendencies towards like racism or unsavory descriptions of that. Okay, go ask your mother, buddy. Sorry about that. So we prefer to try to call them developed and emerging nations when we can. So developed means wealthy. I think he needs his hands clean. Who exploit the labor of the emerging or poorer nations to ensure cheap labor. So like for the fact that almost nothing in the United States is made in America, but rather it's made in places like Indonesia, which is an emerging nation. And many people find this is a moral issue. After all, people don't really like thinking about the fact that their sneakers that, let's be honest, you guys paid way too much money for anyway, was made dirt cheap by a 10-year-old sweatshop laborer who works 15 hours a day when you guys whine about having to pay attention for 20 minutes in class. It kind of makes you feel like, you're a terrible person. Just going to let that sit there for a second. Moving on. Alright, so we have the rise of computers. So this is another aspect in where we get the term information age from. So modern electric computers, and keep in mind I say the word electronic computers, are invented during World War II. Famously, if you guys watch a movie called The Imitation Game, it is a semi-accurate but very well done portrayal of Alan Turing, who's usually called the father of modern computers. Now, there had been computers before, but they were mechanical, meaning they had limited function. What electronic computers made them so important was that they rapidly advanced, they had much more room to grow. Whereas a mechanical computer, you can only do so much, but an electronic one could be developed and improved and evolved upon exponentially and has been for decades. So we see rapid advancement. Originally, they're the size of a room and they're less powerful than your phone. From the 70s, we begin to see the development of a whole new media, digital games, which I know doesn't sound like a big deal, like, okay, so whatever, video games are invented. Well, here's the thing. Video games are more money, they are a bigger business than film is now. So it gives you an idea of how the world changes. Literally, the number one consumption material of entertainment changes because of the invention of computers, and of course, so does everything else. They become common with large businesses in the early 70s, and it's around that same time, a few years later, that we see the first affordable home computers, specifically the Commodore 64 and the Apple II. So we see around the same time in the 70s this bump up of large businesses realizing the potential of computers to automate enormous amounts of work and data, and of course people begin to do it at home. We see rapid communication. So this is your history lesson. This is the current thing. So why this matters, our modern 21st century world, computers run banking, communication, medicine, transportation, music, war, elections, which is why the 2016 one was so easy to interfere with. All of our entertainment, as I mentioned here, the video game industry is, as of, I want to say this slide's from like 2018, 2017. As of that point, video game industry was worth as much as music, television, and film combined. So as I said, it completely changed how we even enjoy our relaxation time, especially now in the age of Corona. So, the internet. Oh boy. All right. So the internet starts, so here's your super quick history lesson, guys. It's originally something called ARPANET. ARPA is a military organization. They are the research and development branch of the military. They're the ones who come up with all the new ways to kill each other. ARPANET starts in the 60s. It's originally just a military communications program, but they have to work with universities because, most of the best people don't work for the military. They work for research universities, especially ones in California. So as they work with the universities start building their own. And in the 80s and 90s, the first iterations of the internet begin to spread to civilian uses and outside of universities. So we see them common in upper and then middle class homes, major businesses, and really the shift comes right around 2000 when the internet begins to dominate as a required aspect of modern life. For instance, I cannot do my job without email. And obviously, as we're seeing right now, a lot of places cannot function without websites. In 2006, this is not missing information. This is just, it's not there. I don't know, this is an extra bullet. But in 2006, to give you an idea of how important the internet has become to our modern life, the verb to Google becomes official, meaning the Oxford Dictionary, the people who decide what actually is an English term or word, decided to Google something is a real verb. So that gives you an idea. The internet's so powerful, it's literally changing our language. The concept of memes. Meme was not a word 50 years ago. So we have all kinds of terms and concepts that only exist because of the internet and its associated technology. All right. So next we have global security. So we have this lovely, super charming map here of the Global Terrorism Index, meaning the impact of terrorism. You will note the United States is one of the higher ones. Now keep in mind, guys, terrorism comes in two flavors. Terrorism can either be foreign, meaning people from another country attacking yours for some kind of ideological reason, or it can be domestic, meaning people attacking you within their own country. Despite all of the fear-mongering you might find online, especially on like Facebook from your aunt, Muslim terrorists are not really that big of a threat in the United States. You are way more likely to be killed by a domestic terrorist in America, and from that, most likely a white supremacist, than you are a Muslim terrorist. So just, hope that helps you sleep at night. And then, of course, we have, I love this picture here. I don't remember where I got it, but this portrayal of modern war. So, in the old days, go back several hundred years, the ability to raise large armies of infantry, soldiers, of people, boots on the ground, and the ability to have superior battlefield tactics was really the primary driver of victory. However, these days, victory really has more to do with technology and its application. We've seen cyber war and drone war being integrated into conventional warfare, where the United States has the largest army in the world, but we don't, I don't know if it's the largest in individual numbers, but it's the largest by the amount of money we spend and the amount of material technology we have. And yet we do not deploy a whole lot of it, even in the conflicts we're still in. Instead, we rely heavily on a large amount of technology to limit how many soldiers we actually have to deploy. Sorry there. Proliferation is a good term to know. The cheap production costs have led to mass production and distribution of modern weapons to every corner of the world, increasing violence and instability in most nations. And there are 9 countries that currently have nuclear weapons. Of those 9, I believe only 5 of them are considered stable. The other 4 have had, within the last couple decades, instability issues. And of course, it's debatable whether or not Russia and the United States are considered stable governments. So the proliferation of weapons is not just in terms of like nukes, it's also in terms of things like the spread of military-grade guns. For instance, you see, some kind of AR variant like this one, and the violence and instability is all over the place. So the United States has the highest rate of mass shootings and death by gun of any developed nation because we have a mass proliferation of firearms. In Africa, not all of it, but you'll see mostly in the central kind of portion of Africa, we see mass instability, and this is all domestic terrorism, by the way, largely because of the proliferation of cheap firearms, mostly from the Russian bloc countries. All right, terrorism, real fast. Extremism of all kinds, whether it's religious, political, or ethnic-based, has been on the rise since 1977, and there was a significant drop after 2014. So it's worth noting that there was a period for about 40 years where it was on a steady rise, but it's actually been in the decline. Despite, again, the news spreading fear for profit, it's actually generally on decline. And, yeah, 2017, that's how old this slide is. The United States only saw 95 deaths by terrorism, and again, most of them were domestic, not foreign. All right, so we got 2 more here. Real fast, the Green Revolution. We are in what's currently known as the Anthropocene, meaning the age of humans, and this term came about because of the fact that, unlike any other species, we have radically altered the environment and climate and are aware of it. So we'll see all kinds of environmental issues, climate change, creating hotter summers and colder winters. Okay, keep in mind, guys, global warming is a misnomer because while that's actually happening, it often confuses people that are less educated because they think, well, it's really cold right now, how can the planet be warmer? Global warming means the planet overall is warmer, but it means that weather's more extreme. There's a video related to this. Natural resources are being depleted faster than they can be replaced. We're not running out of water, we're running out of water we can drink. We're running out of fish we can eat, and we're running out of energy. Right now, about 1/5 of the world experiences food shortages, and most scientists agree that the max population Earth can sustain is around 9 to 10 billion people, unless we radically change how we live, and this will be reached at 2050, give or take. So, now you know there is an expiration date. This doesn't mean everyone's going to die, but it means that developing nations, the emerging ones, are especially at risk because they have high poverty rates. And the Green Revolution is a worldwide movement to apply science and redevelop culture. For instance, the fact that in America we eat way too much meat contributes massively to environmental collapse. All right. Lastly, because I got about 30 seconds here, the last real effect of globalism is a global culture. Culture always spreads. Whether it's by trade routes or by conquest, culture always spreads. During the Cold War, though, we saw America deliberately spread its culture, trying to westernize the world in order to achieve victory. The internet and its computers have, of course, spread culture even faster. Okay, the fact that the internet is little to no cost means this has happened. Popular culture expands. You can see some examples here, but basically popular culture is expanded and blended. especially in major nations with high immigration. All right, guys, that's it for this lecture. Goodbye.